Good day, and welcome to this special edition of Spotlight we call GM's Corner, a series of regular short conversations with LMOA's General Manager Steve Hurwitz about what's on his mind and what's on his agenda. Morning, Mr. General Manager. We've got a lot to talk about this week.
Exciting week, Ron, and I'm glad to be here to help talk about something.
All righty. Well, I'd like to get first to last week. You and Food and Beverage Director Andrew Kerper announced the Board of Directors had approved the cancellation of weekday breakfasts here at the pub and basically the closing of Ash Lawn Grill for regular Friday and Saturday night dinners. Why and why now?
Well, all along we've been monitoring, and from a financial standpoint, F&B is a real big player here. Traditionally, it's always been subsidized at a certain level depending on year-to-year performance, but with all the demands, requirements for programs and for people to get jobs done and what the community needs and wants, it would be difficult to continue a rate of loss that would really subtract from our ability because of the cost. So from a business standpoint, there were things that we knew we would need to address, and then the audit committee took a look and actually verified a great deal of what we already had started to look at and thought was appropriate to do. And so the board, having seen the audit report, agreed with going ahead with certain of those actions, as well as others that we had already put into place and had helped turn the curve from a very negative from a financial standpoint to a much less negative situation, although there's a lot to that. But the audit report itself, the way audits, all reports work, is there's a draft that the staff and I get to look at, and then the board. And again, that included a lot of conclusions that we'd already thought about, and in fact put a couple already into place. And then the board, having seen it, thought it was appropriate to allow me to go ahead along with Andrew and make further changes. However, the report itself will be formally accepted by the board at a meeting very soon, and then it'll be posted on the webpage, and all the members will be able to see it there. But again, it was a sequence of events where things were becoming apparent that we needed to take certain actions that we did. Many of those were reflected in the draft audit report, which verified what we were planning to do, and the board thought appropriate to go ahead with that to make sure it was on the soundest possible financial footing, because any time lost in that effort would be money spent that we would never recover. So many very positive things. The snack bar at the pool has been an immense success. People like the offerings. It's done very well financially. Breakfast here, on the other hand, just groups of 1, 2, or 3 coming in, a very small amount of business. That's separate from the groups. And in fact, we're meeting with the groups, representatives of the groups next week to see what their requirements are. So when we announced that we would only open at 11 o'clock here, Monday through Friday, there wasn't any intention to not accommodate groups that, as they come off the golf course, for example, on a Tuesday, would like to be able to be seated and start getting served at 10:30 versus waiting for 11. Well, we can accommodate that, as opposed to just a handful of customers for the previous 2 hours when it takes 3 people here to operate. So, that's a real loss. And we're looking at staffing, service, quality, and again, the needs not only of these groups, but of everybody in order to do it on a financially stable basis.
Yeah. Was the vote at the annual meeting on one of the board proposals for the $50 extra dues increase to finance food and beverage, which really got, in old sports terms, a real old-fashioned whumping. Did that have any bearing on this?
Only indirectly. In terms of long-term, and we've started working on the 2020 budget, so yes, that's an impact going forward, but as far as day-to-day operation this year, right now, what's facing us, that actually had very little impact. As I said, we've actually initiated some of the changes a number of months ago, and that has helped bend the curve So I would say very little impact directly, but it's clear for long-term future, we need to factor that in and how to maintain a financially responsible food and beverage service that still meets people's needs
Yeah.
and expectations.
Yeah, I guess part of this is just in all candor, the rather seemingly abrupt timing after, as far as I know anyway, the public has been told, well, yeah, improvements are being made, a lot of suggestions positive, the trend was positive, favorable going forward, and then all of a sudden the hammer falls. And it's a matter of people saying, wait a minute, I haven't really seen that financial analysis that was supposed to call the story, so to speak. So.
Well, there's no doubt that I'm responsible for that. So if it was abrupt, that's not the way I like to do things. And if people feel that way, they have a right to. I hope when they see the full fruit of the study and the results of what we're doing, that they'll view it differently. We'll see. But I'm the one who made that decision. The board endorsed it. And they were fulfilling their duty about the long-term financial health of the community.
All right, understood. As long as you were mentioning budgetary issue, might as well go to that. The budget for 2020 that process has begun, has it not?
It absolutely has, and there's a calendar of events that by the end of today, as we're doing this recording, will be on the webpage, and members and all residents are free to take a look at it. There's many opportunities as that process matures for people to observe, to make comments, and in fact participate as it goes through. And I really encourage people to do that. We often get questions later after that whole process is over about why we did something. And the answer really is it's in the policy, and we always try to follow the policy religiously, and the procedures that are published so the members can know about them. In this case, when it comes to the thought process and so forth, every committee meeting, every of the finance committee, for example, every meeting of the board is open to the public. They can come observe. There's always a comment period.
Member comment period,
for the public. Right. So I encourage people that are vitally interested in that, which is a lot of people, that they can follow it very closely as it evolves. And we look forward to their comments. There's a point in budgeting for HOAs. It's called the community's needs and expectations, and that comes from people. And so we hope people will take the opportunity to comment on that as the budget is being formed. After is a little bit harder.
Right, yeah. What impact did those annual meeting votes rejecting substantially both proposals for dues increase by the board, what impact does that have on the financial planning process?
Well, the process unfolds in pretty much the same way. But surely, we now know there's a definition of what funds could be available. The board has the right, under our bylaws, to adopt dues of any level up to an increase of 3% from the previous years.
Yes.
That doesn't mean they will, but certainly when the board has asked and encouraged the community to support an increase in the dues for good and sufficient reason in the board's view, and when that's not forthcoming, then you got to consider what funds might be available and then what we can do. So we've already gotten instructions from the new treasurer to take a look at the operations for the rest of the year, both in terms of day-to-day operations and replacement reserves, the lake fund, road funds, roads in particular, very important, and MR&R in general. So we're in the process of scrubbing those through the end of this year so we can give the board a good forecast. The board's called for quarterly forecasts, which is something we've been endeavoring, we've been starting to do anyway, to gear up to do that. So there's a look at the immediate operation, because what's true is, as opposed to, let's say, federal government spending, if we don't spend money, we have it the next year. It doesn't go away. So anything that you might be able to conserve on, and maybe a project that you could either put off or isn't as necessary as it might have been, is something we look at. But really, we're looking at the most economical and effective way to do everything. And So we'll see how that works out. Then when it comes to the budget itself for next year, clearly there's a more narrow definition of what funds
Yeah.
will be available, not only next year, but in all the out years.
Right.
The reserve study is very instructive for that because it's interactive.
Mm-hmm.
So when there's a decision to go ahead with something like a stream restoration project, we can plug that in and run it out and see exactly where, with the current plans, the Lake Health Fund would be in the ensuing years. So that's very instructive to the committees that make recommendations and then to the board that decides those things. So we're doing all that.
Okay, all right. We had a rather bizarre incident that unfortunately wound up closing the pool for several days, beginning last Friday and on into this week. Gosh, what happened there?
Well, it was a very unfortunate incident, and probably the best outcome of it is that the youth that was involved in having a glass and a mask break is okay. Suffered a very minor injury, a little more than a scratch.
Oh, that's good.
We're glad. We're very pleased about that. But once you get glass in the pool, and it happens to be a brand new pool, there's a procedure you have to go through. We're very pleased that we have Swim Club Management as our contractor partner this year. For the first time that we've outsourced that. And they just started right in with their protocol. We were able to empty the pool quickly and then fill it quickly. In fact, it was filled as of last evening. And then Swim Club Management, working with our contracts manager and with our maintenance department, was able to start last night in starting up the pumps and adjusting the chemistry in the water.
Wow.
So I'll know a little later today, and we'll put out just when the pool will reopen. We're very anxious to have that as soon as possible. There is the Sharks have a meet tomorrow night. That's a big deal for us.
Oh, absolutely.
It's a great.
Yeah.
They're a great swim team with great leadership, great kids, and we are very committed to making sure that happens. I hope to get positive news about that, and we'll put it out. In addition, we're working on, since we've lost pool days a couple of times this year, we're looking at working with Swim Club Management about possibly extending the season weekends after Labor Day, and I hope to have a positive announcement about that, and maybe even something else to provide extra access to the pool for various sectors in the community that are very interested in the pool. So we'll see how that works out, but I'm optimistic we can do that. We very much appreciate also the communications of support about what we're doing. That's been very nice to hear, because the staff has worked on this virtually nonstop since last Friday.
Yeah, it's just terribly unfortunate, and certainly nothing of administration, either within ourselves or with Swim Club Management, et cetera, or fortunately any other mechanical thing with the pool. Just one of those wild incidents. Anyway, maybe a happier note. We've had now a Tween Night thing, and it seemed to go pretty well.
It did. At the Tween Night last weekend, we had 35 tweens, which is a record crowd for us, double what we've had before. And the great thing is, this is bearing fruit of a very serious effort to provide activities for that younger demographic. And it seems to be working. There's a sports camp going on right now, run by the county, and we're grateful for what they've done. They've also done other activities here, all first time. The Tween Night is a big deal. I expect that to grow.
Okay, there going to be more of those?
There'll be more, maybe not this summer.
Okay.
We'll see about that, but very possibly, depending on the success. I think Parks and Recs is consuming that and thinking about what they can do. But they're very motivated to provide activities here, and again, that's a very good thing. I think it'll grow. The ping pong table seems to have made a big difference, as well as all of what's offered. So that's a real positive thing. And there'll be a picture in Lakeviews that's coming out later this week that I think a lot of people are going to clip it and keep it.
Okay.
I know I am.
Oh, all right. Well, that's great. And you have a challenge to the community.
I do. We are, surprise, an HOA. And HOAs are actually we're not rental management companies. You know, when you rent a place, you pay rent, and there's a company that provides everything. HOAs are actually volunteer organizations. The board is voluntary, the committees are voluntary, and when it comes to major events like July 4th, almost everything is largely run by volunteers. We have a long history of that here. A little trend with overtime, with age, and some of the people that have been volunteering for a long time moving to other places and so forth. So the volunteer pool has shrunk a little bit. So the staff was out in full force, which you know, we're all glad to do. But all of those events that we have on July 4th, for example, or Oktoberfest, and many other events, really depend on volunteers as well as regular continuing volunteer. I'll give a shout out to LMBC, the Lake Monticello Beautification Corps. That's something very few places have anything like that. I don't even know of any others that do. And that's very labor intensive.
Yep.
And their membership we need their membership to be up to what they need to take on all the work that they do.
So you say you're looking for 20 people to sign up for something by August 15th?
August 15th, yes.
Okay, how do they sign up?
They call our front desk.
Okay.
And talk to Anne Marie Anderson at the front desk. And
all right.
She will move it right on.
Okay. We encourage that. We thank you for being here, and we will see you again next time. You've been watching GM's Corner with LMOA General Manager Steve Hurwitz. We hope you'll join us for more of these GM Corners and also take in the full range of broadcast programming by the LMOA broadcast group, either on your favorite Channel 977 or up on YouTube. So till we see you again, on behalf of the broadcast group, I'm Ron Krause. Thanks very much and good day.